So thanks for asking me to present here today. So yeah, I work with the statistics unit in SEAI, and SEAI is responsible for producing the official national statistics on energy use in Ireland. And these feed into the EPA emissions inventory. And in fact, the emissions from energy make up about 60% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it's quite a significant input. So we recently published the energy balance for 2019 data, and along with that this year we also published some revisions that we made from the data from 1990 to 2018. And these revisions were made on the basis of improved data that we now have on business energy use following the new data we have from the CSO. And so that's what I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of those changes today. So it's kind of a big area, a big revision, I guess, and I don't have a lot of time to talk about it. So I'm going to skip straight to my summary just to get the important points out, and then I'll give you a bit more information on it. So I'll give you some information on the energy balance and how it's constructed, because it's useful to understand that, to understand the need and the basis of the revisions. I'll talk a bit about the business energy use survey, and I'll just give you a sample of some of the kind of revisions that we've made, but really I'll be pointing you to where you can find more information on this on our website. So to start with, yeah, so the CSO started this business energy use survey back in 2009, and they first released the data for it in late 2018, early 2019, and this year now is the first year that we've been able to incorporate it into the energy balance. And so this gives us much improved data on the energy use in industry and services. It's important to note that total fuel use hasn't been affected. What's been affected is the split of fuels, how we split them across the different sectors. So mostly it's improved data on business energy, so industry and services. So the splits amongst those services have changed. But also there has been some knock-on effects, for instance, on the residential sector, because we now know a bit more about where oil is used in the services sector. And so there's knock-on effects there, for instance. The revisions, they are extensive. As I say, they do affect almost all fuels used in those sectors, and they do have knock-on effects on other sectors. But again, it's important to say the overall fuels haven't changed. So it means it doesn't affect the total emissions from energy use. Those statistics haven't changed. Also, the ETS, non-ETS split hasn't changed because we had good data on that already. So that means that our emissions reductions targets data doesn't change. And it also doesn't affect, for instance, the renewable energy targets. So really, it's just the split in the non-ETS sector between where we were saying energy was used in industry versus services versus, in some cases, residential. So what it does give us is much better data on industry and services sectors in particular. Particular services sectors, before now, we didn't have good view really of what was happening in that sector. We had a rough split between commercial and public services, but now we can split out energies and those services into 10 different subsectors, giving us a much better picture of how energy is being used there. We also have an estimate of construction energy use for the first time. It's important to say that this is it's not the end point. This is always an ongoing process where we're looking to develop new data sources and improved sources of data to give us a better view of how energy is being used in the country. And we always welcome feedback. This has been quite a significant update. So they're definitely the case that there may be further refinements that we make to these revisions over time as we get a better look at the changes in particular subsectors. And so we welcome your feedback. Our email address is there, epssu@seai.ie, and I'll put that up again at the end. And of course, we will also continue to work with the CSO to maybe refine some of their estimates also where appropriate. Where you can find more information on this is on our website, www.seai.ie/national energy balance. So that brings you to the page where we publish the energy balance data. And this year then we have a separate section that looks specifically at these revisions that we've made. And so there's a link there to a report, a specific report on the revisions that you can download. And there's also a very detailed Excel sheet that we've put up there that kind of gives you the before and after data in great detail. And you can see in detail for each subsector what the changes have been. So now I'll just go into a bit more detail. And as I said, it's useful to start off with a kind of an overview of how we produce the energy balance to understand the nature and the need for these revisions. So the real important point to take here is that the energy balance is a top-down approach. So we start with the total fuels coming into the country, or those that we produce in the country, and that gives us the total primary energy by fuel. And then we also have a very good idea of what's going on in electricity generation and oil refining. So we have a very good picture of what's going on with primary and final energy by fuel use in the country. Those are very well-known, well-founded statistics. The next step then is splitting that total fuel use that we know is happening in the economy out across the different sectors of the economy. Sorry, my presentation is faltering. There, no, sorry. So we usually split them across these subsectors: residential, transport, industry, commercial and public services, and agriculture and fisheries. So there's a slight difference in how we apportion our sectors compared to the EPA sectors. For instance, we split electricity use across the sectors. So the electricity used in residential is included under residential here, not in a separate category of energy industries. But these are the sectors that we use. And then there's further detail, for instance, on transport and industry, where we have a number of subsectors. So again, it's a top-down methodology. So we start off with knowing the total fuel, for instance, electricity or gas used in the country, and then on a fuel-by-fuel basis, we apportion that fuel use to these different sectors. And depending on the fuel, for some fuels, we have better or worse data, or a better or worse picture of exactly where the fuels are being used. So again, I'll just give you a very high level kind of feel for this. So for instance, for the networked regulated fuels like gas and electricity, we have a very good idea of the residential versus non-residential fuel use, because we can get that data directly from the tariff structures that the suppliers use. But residential includes agriculture, and all non-residential is kind of together. So we need additional or supplementary data to try and split out residential into residential and agriculture, and non-residential into industry, commercial and public services. Similarly for oil, we have a pretty good idea of most oil is used for transport, and we've got a pretty good idea of where that is because there's specific fuels used for transport. For instance, we know unmarked gas oil is road transport, kerosene is planes, petrol is pretty much all transport. But basically all non-transport oil use, then it's harder to split out. So we need, again, additional data or some supplementary surveys or industry estimates to split out your gas oil use into whether it's going into homes or whether it's going into commercial services or industry. So again, this is all done on a fuel by fuel basis, and it's quite complex, and every fuel has its own ways of doing this. But just at a very high level, broadly speaking, how we've been doing this up to now is that for the high level sectoral splits, so that's industry, residential, services, and agriculture at that high level, there was initial estimates made for 1990, back in probably the early 90s, to split those out by fuel type. And basically those fuel splits have been carried forward from 1990 all the way through to 2018, basically in the absence of better data. And then within the sectors then, so for instance, within industry, we split that out into the subsectors in industry based on some additional data, for instance, the CSO Census of Industrial Production. But obviously that high level split there that we're using in 1990 split and carrying it through to 2018, that's been highlighted for quite a long time now as a data gap that really needs further information to split out. So we've been working and looking for many years to try and improve this data. And that was really the genesis of the CSO Business Energy Survey, was to try and give us this better data that we needed on the sectoral splits. So the CSO survey actually started collecting data in 2009, but it was only in the last year or so that we've been able to actually get the data and incorporate it into the energy balance. So just a few words on the CSO Business Energy Survey. So it surveys businesses in Ireland on the quantities of energy they use, so that's kilowatt hours or litres of oil, and also on the spend. It's a sample survey, so we don't survey, the CSO don't survey every company every year. They survey a sample and then they weight that up to be nationally representative based on the CSO Business Register and other supplementary data. It's an annual survey. They started collecting data for 2009, and currently data is available up to 2017. But next year, the plan is to publish the 2018 and 2019 data. So by the time we're publishing the 2020 balance, there'll be 2019 BEUS data available for that. And really, for more information on this, it's all available from the CSO website. I have the link there, but it's probably just as easy to Google CSO Business Energy Survey, and you'll find the information that they provide there. And the actual data as well from the survey is available directly from the CSO. In terms of incorporating the BEUS data into the energy balance, though, it's very important to say that there are methodological differences between the two data sources. So as I've said, the energy balance is a top-down methodology. So we start off knowing the total amount of fuels use, and then we distribute that out amongst the sectors. Whereas the BEUS has the opposite bottom-up approach. So they survey individual entities and then gross that up to the national average. So where you have these top-down versus bottom-up methodologies, they very rarely give you the same answer meeting in the middle, and it's the same situation here. So the two surveys are not directly comparable. And really, for us, incorporating the BEUS data into the energy balance, we need to examine the data for each fuel very carefully on a fuel-by-fuel and sector-by-sector basis, and combine the BEUS with other data sources that we have, making expert judgments as to what's the most appropriate use of the data in each case. And that's what we've done in this rather large exercise that we've carried out in the last year. So I can't go through the full suite of the revisions that we've made because they affect nearly all the fuels in nearly all the sectors, so it's really quite extensive. So I've just picked out a very quick summary of electricity use, for instance, just to give you a feel of the kind of changes that have been made in the revisions. All of this data is in the detailed report that's on our website, but just quickly I'll go through electricity as a sample. So for instance, this graph here shows the before and after the revisions electricity use in industry. So we can see the darker blue line there is the old energy balance data, and the lighter green line is the revised post-BEUS, if you like, energy balance data. So now that we have the BEUS and we have a better view of how fuel is being used in industry and services, we see that actually the revised industry electricity use is significantly less than what we were saying in the old energy balance figure. And what we can also see, in fact, is that electricity that we thought was being used in industry and now we know isn't, is actually reallocated. We know now that it's actually being used in commercial and public services instead. So we see actually that the old estimate of electricity use in the commercial services and also in the public services is now lower than the new estimate, which is considerably higher in those sectors. So that's just a quick example. Again, those kind of changes apply for each fuel in each sector, sometimes also, for instance, having knock-on effects on the residential sector, particularly for oil use there. But for more information on that, it's best thing I can do is point you to our report that we've produced on our website, which is on the site that you see there, SEAI.ie/national energy balance. And as I said, this is definitely going to be an ongoing process of improvement that we make. If you review the data and you have any questions or queries, we definitely encourage you to send them in to our email address there, which is epssu@seai.ie. So thank you very much, and I'm open to take any specific questions.